Alright, now back to the AMA. Another question players have when it comes to Arma is support for peripherals like steering wheels, gaming pedals, or Hotas joysticks. Although pilots of course love the option to zip around the map on something other than a mouse and keyboard, let's not all ignore our military truck driving simulator fans out there. However, unfortunately, this is not a top priority at the moment. I'm not too surprised to hear this, since currently everything is designed not just for mouse and keyboard, but also Xbox and PlayStation gamepad controllers. So realistically, there's kind of like 3 different options to drive, fly, or move around. In the long list of things that the devs are working on their way to Arma 4 being released in 2027, it seems like things like Hotas and steering wheels are very far, if not completely off the list, but I would be very surprised if we didn't hear about it when Arma 4 does release.
Alright boys, so we heard it straight from the horse's mouth there, from that recent Ask Me Anything, that there's going to be no Hotas support for a while in Arma Reforger. Good news is there's a workaround. I'm here to lead you through that today, step by step. I have a video out already on how to do this. This is going to be a little bit more detailed. I've helped a couple people set it up now, so I know about a little bit more of the frequently asked questions and a little bit more about where people are getting stuck. So we're going to do this from go and get you guys set up to everything you need to do to get your stick up and running in Arma Reforger. And so we'll get into it. So first off, Arma Reforger has no Hotas support whatsoever. So there's no input from any flight sticks. The only thing that Arma Reforger is able to recognize is mouse and keyboard inputs and an Xbox or PS5 controller inputs. So because of that, we need to be able to remap things from our any axes that we want to map. It needs to be into an Xbox configuration so that Arma Reforger thinks that you're using an Xbox's sticks instead of these sticks. Everything else we're getting done with mouse and keyboard. So basically the only thing we need to be an Xbox emulation are the 2 stick inputs. So this is how we get it done. So that's why we need to do it. Here's how we get it done. So there's 3 programs you need. You're going to need Joystick Gremlin. You need VJOY, which is a dependency of Joystick Gremlin. And you need X360CE. Basically, Joystick Gremlin is something that allows you to map your joystick stuff to anything that you want. So mouse and keyboard bindings, you can map them to the VJOY device, which is the second program. Basically, VJOY is like a dependency of Joystick Gremlin. Joystick Gremlin allows you to map things to different things. Well, VJOY is a program that is a virtual joystick. So basically, you can use Joystick Gremlin to map things onto a VJOY device, and then we're using those as the input to X360CE, which is the controller emulator. And then that controller emulator is what is talking to Arma. So basically, you need to download Joystick Gremlin, you need to download VJOY, and you need to download X360CE. I'm going to link all these in the description. Something to note here, when you download X360CE, that is also has a virtual driver that you need to download. There's going to be a pop-up message. Let me see if I can show you here. Over here, with over here, there'll be a pop-up message somewhere in this area, I believe, that'll say error. You need to download a driver. Basically, it's a pop-up kind of like this pop-up here. But just click that, download what it says, and then your controller here is now input into Arma. So basically that allows this program to interface with your computer and talk to Arma. So with that being said, let's jump into it really fast. We're going to go through this quickly and kind of just step by step from the top. Alright, so once you have all 3 of those things downloaded, Joystick Gremlin, VJOY, and X360CE, we're going to get you set up. So what you got to do is, I like opening them both side by side here. So these are both my programs. And something to note right off the bat, we're going to start everything with Joystick Gremlin. Right off the bat, this toggles your profile on and off. When you're clicking this, now your profile is running. When that isn't clicked, your profile isn't running. So if you're trying to bind things over in the binding and it's not working, it's probably because you don't have this turned on. So first and foremost, let's get the bare bones necessities that need to be mapped through here to get into here to get us started. When you're at your top folders here, you're going to see joystick, rudder, and throttle. Those should be your three things. If you have a joystick that has the Z-axis on it, obviously you're not going to have this other rudder. But basically, here's your things that you need to click in between them to do different things on them. So, first off, click on your joystick. Let me pull mine into my upright position. So first off, click joystick. And then anything that you do is going to show up automatically here on the left. So basically you can see as soon as I'm pressing things, it's showing up highlighted there of what button is what. Keep in mind, if you're running the profile, it will not show you what button is what. That is only something that is when the profile is off. With your profile off, you can go around and figure out what button is what. So, from the beginning, what you got to do, wiggle your stick, and you're going to see your X and your Y axis here, just like that. So you're going to go into the X axis. Up at the top here, you're going to see remap. Remapping it here is adding it to the VJOY device. So you're only doing these things with something that you want to go onto the controller. So you would go remap, add. So VJOY device 1, that's what you want, and then you're going to do it with whatever thing it says here. So you have the X-axis, you're going to go ahead and click X-axis and leave it just like so. And so this is how mine is set up, X-axis, and that's all you need. Same with the Y-axis. You go down here, you can, go around, click the Y. You're going to go up here where it says remap, add, and it's going to do this. So you just go down, click Y-axis. So now you have the X and the Y set up. Mine are already set up, that's why I'm adding and deleting it down there. Alright, that's all you need for your right stick. Now we're going to left stick. So you go over to your rudder. You're going to find which one is you're moving your rudder left and right. I've seen on some of these, it is labeled as X-axis. Mine is labeled as Z-axis, but basically just move it and you'll figure out which one. For example, this is gas pedal, this is brake pedal. These are the different axes. This is the one to turn left and right. This is the one you want to map. So click on it, remap, add, and then this is Z rotation. You want the rotation on that one. Alright, next up, throttle. Click throttle up here, and then you're going to throttle up and down. A lot of people have two different throttles. If you see here, I've got, as I'm moving this up and down, it's because I have a split throttle. It really doesn't matter. If you have a split throttle, you don't have to do it to both. This is me just moving the one throttle. And so that's the only throttle that really has any input. This one doesn't really do anything, but anyways, click on the throttle you want to map. Same deal, remap, do Z-axis. So now you have, on the joystick, you have X and Y. On the rudder, you have Z rotation. And on the throttle, you have Z-axis. These are the three things you need to be running through the emulator. Everything else can be done off of mouse and keyboard inputs. Nothing else needs to be going through the X360CE. So the quick and dirty of how you map these things now into X360CE. When you first open up X360CE, you need to make sure that you only have the VJOY device added in. So when you open it up, you're going to have all of your inputs. You're going to turn all of those off, but only have this one here, named VJOY device. That is your only input, and that shows up here. This is the only thing. No joystick, no rudder, no nothing. It's all running through the VJOY device. So now that all three of those four of those axes are set up, they're set up to the two different sticks. So we're going to go ahead and turn on our profile. And now we come over here, and mine are already set up. So this is how it looks when you're done. You've got movement here, you've got movement here, and you've got movement here. So how you would get that set up is you just click on the thing that you want to bind. So for example, we're going to go the throttle up and down. You would just click on it just like so. I'm going to not rebind mine because mine's already set up. So basically, click on the throttle up and down, move your throttle up and down, and you should be good to go. Note, my throttle here is inverted because I'm trying to make it more like a helicopter throttle. So this technically is full forward with my throttle. But if you look at the stick here on the emulator, it's going full backwards. If you want this to be how it normally is, so that this is full forward, you're going to look here where this is lit up. It happens to be labeled as axis 3. This is what's coming out of VJOY. It really doesn't matter what these are, but if you want to flip them around, all you do is go into here, axes. Right now it's set up to axis 3. If you want it to be inverted, you would go up here and do inverted axis 3, and then that will switch that to the opposite side. But I like mine to be all the way forward is throttle all the way down. And so you would just, so on and so forth, map the rest of them. So you don't need to do it over here. Click on the stick. So if you want the left and the right, on the left stick is your rudder. So this is your pedals going left and right. So you just click on that, map it, and then make sure that when your left foot is forward, it's going to the left side on the stick. That's you turning left. And then similarly with the stick, you would just click on the up and then push your stick forward, and then click and all the way back, and then click on the right and go all the way to the right, all the way to the left, and now you should be completely bound. And note here, when your stick goes forward, you want the X360 stick to also be going forward. If this is not going forward, if when you push it forward it pulls back, you want to come over here to the axis. This happens to be on axis 2. So you would go axis, inverted, axis 2, and then click that, and then it will invert it. Mine is already inverted, so when I push mine forward, the stick goes forward in the Xbox controller. So once that's done, that's all you need to have mapped through here. Some things that I've found help with binding issues is I have my Y button and my right trigger button on the controller. The Y button is how you start the engine, and the trigger button is obviously a trigger button. It's how you fire. I found that sometimes it can mess with some bindings, having it set these particular things set onto the mouse input. So to get these to show up here, you need to have those button presses recognized in VJOY. Well, how do we do that? We hop back into Joystick Gremlin, make sure our profile is turned off, and so we're wanting to map 2 new buttons here. One of them is the trigger, so let's hop over here, go joystick. So if I press the trigger, it shows me what button. So then you would, I'm going to show this as button 1, just as an example. You go remap, add, and then it's going to already default as a button here. Do not change this, because when you do the next mapping, it will automatically update this to a button that isn't used. So just leave this as whatever it defaults to. If it says button 1, if it says button 6, just leave it as it is, because the next one you open will be an entirely new button, and that way you're not accidentally binding 2 different commands to the same button. So what you want to do is just have it be any button, and then that is my fire button. If you want, this is completely optional extra. You can add a description and write in what the button is here, so fire. That way, when you go to click that later, you know, oh, that was my fire button. It's right here. So with both those on, I'm going to clear this out because that was just an example for you. I already have my fire button set up. It is this one for me. All right, so the next button that I have mapped to the controller is the start engine button. So that button I have mapped to this here. So you can see with my profile off, it illuminates this button. So how I got that there is just remap, add, and then I left it on the button that it said. So it was button 2, it's just what happened to come up for me. So leave that there. So once you have your 2 buttons that you want to map onto those controller, turn this back on, come back over to the controller, And it's as simple as clicking on the button you want to remap, and then clicking on the button that you want it to be mapped to. So this was my start engine button. It gets mapped to the Y button. And then the fire button gets mapped to the right trigger. Same way, you just click on it, pull the trigger, and now it is now bound to the right trigger. These are the only things that I have running through X360CE as far as button inputs. Everything else counts as a mouse or a keyboard input through controller Gremlin, or Joystick Gremlin. Alright, since we now have everything that is going to be mapped onto the controller, we might as well finish off with the X360CE settings before we jump into the rest of it. So first off, you have your dead zones and your curves here. So for the right thumb, this is your stick. I'm going to explain briefly on how these things work so you know why they're doing what they're doing. So if we blow this up, maybe not quite that big, huh? Okay, so here we've got dead zones and our curves. Right thumb and left thumb. This is your right thumb. What you have here on the left, this number is what the actual stick input is. The other number is what the program is sending out. So you got your green number is the raw stick input, and the blue number is what your program is sending out. You need the blue number to be at 0. Because if this number is not at 0, when you go to do things in the menu, it's going to think you're trying to use an Xbox controller when really you're trying to use your mouse and your keyboard. So this needs to be set at 0. And so to get it to 0, basically all sticks have a little bit of, I guess you call it stick drift or input miscalculation. I don't know what you would call it. Basically, it's getting a reading right now, even though I'm not doing anything with it. And so you need to up, this is the middle one, dead zone. You need to ideally have this as close to 0 as possible. But you need the blue number to be 0. So slowly turn this up until you get that blue number to be 0. Mine is set at currently 2% of a dead zone and 1% of a dead zone. I've seen it be needing to be as much as 3% of a dead zone to be able to get it to work. But basically you just slide this up until that number hits 0, and then flick the stick around, make sure that every time that stick is going to 0, because that is the input going to the device. So now that you have the dead zone set up, so it's the X and the Y there, I have my anti-dead zone set to 5%. What the anti-dead zone does, you can see it here as the break in the graph. It makes your stick feel a little bit more responsive. So basically, if you start to move your stick just a little bit, as soon as it gets like 1% of stick input, it is now outputting at 5%. So basically, it just keeps the stick from feeling quite so squishy near the center. Feel free to play around with this. You might be able to up it to 10% and get it to feel a little bit more responsive yet. It really just depends on how responsive your stick feels. This old ball and socket style that mine is not very responsive feeling, so I have this turned up to 5% and 5%. Alright, next is the sensitivity curve. This, I have mine set up to 40 and 40. This just makes it more sensitive. You can see the raw inputs, and this is inverted. That's why those are going away from each other instead of towards each other. So when I push it forward, it's really giving down inputs and not up inputs. That makes sense. But basically, the sensitivity, this will make it either more or less sensitive. It's the actual physical curve of this curve. So for this case, we want it to be more sensitive, so we click this box. Because without this box clicked, it says makes it less sensitive in the center. That's not what we want. We don't want a squishy stick. We want it to be more sensitive, so we have this clicked in. Now the left thumb is a different story. So the left thumb, this is your rudder and your throttle. And so with these, I don't have any anti-dead zone set up, so that is at 0%. And the dead zone, this is going to depend highly on your specific hardware. So mine, there is not a center notch, if that makes sense, in either the stick or the pedals. I kind of need to like feel where the center is, and it's not exactly intuitive on exactly where the center is. But just like the other one, I need this to be hitting 0 when I open the map. Otherwise, it's going to think I'm trying to use an Xbox controller instead of trying to use the map with a mouse and keyboard. So, how do you get around this? Well, you do a bigger, fatter dead zone. I found that about 13% has worked well with both of mine, both my feet and my throttle. It just happens to line up on 13% for both, but basically that is when I'm throttling back, there's a big fat spot right here. So from this position to that position, doesn't actually feel that fat. From there to there is off. See that blue number representing 0? Here? This is off. So you want this to be, when you throttle and try and use your map, you want this to be reading 0. You want to be able to hit that 0 like every time. So I have a little spot where I try and line mine up, and there's not very much room for error there, so the bigger it is, the better to find that spot. But if you have a little detent or something where your throttle hits like a little spot where it gets stuck right in the center, that's perfect. You can have this, ideally you want these to be as small as possible. Now with that being said, I have the sensitivity less sensitive on my rudder controllers, and this is so that you can line up and make more precise shots with a really far away helicopter shot. Sometimes you just want the helicopter literally to rotate like half a degree, and it's hard to do that precise of a movement, especially with the dead zone built in. And so if you make this set up to 50, then as you're moving it, it is kind of deadening what your input is until you get to the end. So you can just jam it to the end to really turn, but if you're trying to line up and make that precise shot, it's a lot easier to do these little movements like this and be able to turn left and right, and have this be set up to be less sensitive in the center. You invert it, it becomes more sensitive, make the problem worse. Kind of similar on the throttle. The throttle setup is by far the weirdest thing within this game, and you'll figure that out as you go. But we are using an emulator. It is not set up as a 0 to 100% throttle. We are emulating what a stick is doing. So it's a little bit goofy, but way more intuitive than it sounds once you actually hop into it. But this also less sensitive in the center. It makes it feel like a little bit more precise movements when you're going. So I have mine at 31 and 50. This is for my left thumb. All right, that is all of the settings that you need to do in X360CE. So hop over here to Joystick Gremlin again. All right, so if we hop over here again to Joystick Gremlin, what's going to be the best way to do this? All right, so that is everything that you need to know within X360CE. So with that being said, there are many other things that I have mapped to my. Make sure you click up here, the Save All. I do not have a particular save as or add game. The problem is Steam games have a hard time recognizing, or X360CE has a hard time recognizing Steam games. So I just have it open like this. I just click Save All, and then when I want to use it, I just open it up. I don't load anything. I don't do anything. It's just always on this screen and good to go whenever I open it. So now that we're all done with Joystick Gremlin, or with X360CE, let me tell you about everything else that I have bound to Joystick Gremlin. So, let me click off of that so we don't have that sound. Alright, now that we have everything figured out that we needed to from X360CE, let me tell you about everything else that I have mapped within Joystick Gremlin. So, for the basics, we're just talking my heli mode at first. There's certain things you need. It doesn't matter where you have them mapped as long as it makes sense to you. So I'm going to go over really quickly on where I have them, and then we'll kind of go from there. So I'm going to turn off my profile here so that you can see what buttons are being pressed and they will register here. So first off, I've got this button here. This is my switch weapons button. And you can see I have a description added here. How you get that in there, basically have the button you want. You're going to go up here instead of remap, because this is just how you're getting stuff onto the VJOY device. You're going to go map to keyboard. It pulls up a box like this, where then you click it to record the keys. So in this example, it's going to be V as in Victor. So V is what changes your weapons within Arma Reforger. So we're not having to bind it to anything in particular, it's just hitting the V button, and that switches your weapons. So if you have miniguns and you want to switch the rockets, you just click this button, it hits V, you're good to go. Alright, so we're just going to go the quick and dirty now. Now that you know what buttons are what, we're going to go really quickly through what ones I have set up. And then from there, we're going to go to the view. So, really quickly, everything else that I have set up on this joystick. This one I've got switch weapons. Over here, this button press is a zoom. So how to get the zoom on there? Zoom is right click on the mouse. So up here, you go remap, map to mouse, add. You're not doing motion, you're doing button. Go here, and it's going to have you click the button you want. That's the right click. So boom, you're good to go. You have the right click mapped in. Next thing I have is I've got a button that is very easy to press, and this is your flare button. You're going to be pressing this button a lot. So this button is, you're going to click here. You're going to go map to keyboard, add. And then this one is left shift and F, and you just press those both at the same time, and it will come up as both those buttons as in the same keybind. So this is left shift F. If you want to, you can be labeling all of these. This is flares. Okay, next button. We've got a switch fire mode. So this is, if you have, this one really only pertains to the rockets. This switches between one shot, a salvo, a ripple, or a full ripple. So this is how many rockets you're shooting at the same time. You do map to keyboard, left shift, and V as in Victor. Left shift V, that is change fire mode. Alright, what else do we have on the stick? There is deploy chaff. I have not seen a situation where you actually need to deploy chaff yet, but that is left shift and C. A similar thing, map it to keyboard, left shift C. Some helicopters have chaff. I have not run into a situation where I've ever needed to pop chaff, but that is the binding. The last thing that I have on this particular joystick is I have, it's the button that's right below the escape and above the tab. Don't know what that button's called, little asterisk-y thing. That button brings up the command wheel for the AI units. So this is really only for games where they have the living quarters and the AI units. Basically, you could press that button to bring up the menu to say, get into my helicopter or get out of my helicopter. So if you have AI units in your squad, you can load them into a helicopter and then tell them to get out quickly, and then when you land, they'll all bail out. So it's like a quick way of controlling the AI units without having to do keyboard presses. That one is strictly optional. I wouldn't think that most people will be commanding AI with the helicopter, as most servers don't have the AI even implemented within them. Let's see. That is the last button that I have set up on this particular joystick. So let's switch over to the throttle. So my throttle, I've got a bunch of them. I've got C as in Charlie. That is going to be auto hover. So similarly, you need to click into whatever device you're using. Click the button. You might need to scroll down. Here's the button that I wanted to bind. and then you're adding to keyboard, and it's Charlie for auto hover. Next button, I've got one here that is bound to a keyboard called Frank. This is your action button. So there's a couple buttons within the helicopter that you can't press via a keybind. For example, there's one that is for your hazard lights or anti-collision lights. And so you physically need to look at that button, and then you press the action button. So this is F. F is the action button. One that I kind of just discovered, so in some helicopters, like the Mi-8, there's a little dot on the windshield. Well, that little dot doesn't really line up. But if you press the Z button, as in Z for zoo, your guy kind of focuses in the seat and lines up more on that little crosshair, and all of a sudden that crosshair does line up. So this is a button I would call focus, and that is mapped to the keyboard as Zulu or Z. Next button, we've got, this is an additional button. This one isn't necessary because we already have focus on the, or zoom on the joystick. But this is another zoom. If you guys want to have zoom in two places, I happen to have it in two places. So this is mapped to a mouse button, and it is the right mouse button, and that is so that I can zoom in. This button is the enter button. Enter button is to change your third person to first person. So enter is third to first, and that is what you would need to map there. T is mapped to talk. So this is proximity chat. T is mapped to talk, so that is proximity chat. So this is talking to people within your helicopter. I have this on a toggle. This is something that will need to be held down. So it's nice with this one because I can click it forward and it stays until I click it back. So I don't need to keep holding down the button. But you will need to hold down the button the entire time to talk. Next button is me back on that same one. This is caps lock. Caps lock is talk over your radio. So you're going to want to find that to something similar that you can hold down easily, or a button that holds itself down. Next button is L. This is for your lights. If you do a short press, it will turn on your landing lights, and if you do a long press, it turns on your searchlight. You can almost not see the landing lights at all from the cockpit, but there is an indicator in the lower left-hand part of your screen that will show if your light is on underneath. But that is how you turn either one of those lights off. Is off one button. It's just a press or a hold, and that does the two different options. We already went over, there's the one button to start the engine, but that is bound to a VJOY device button. And then that is it for my throttle. So we're also already finished with the rudders. The only thing that I have set up on the rudders is the rotation. So the only thing that we have left now, so we've done all of our button presses. The only thing left now is to do mouse input. So for my mouse input, I've got, on my joystick, I've got a hat button. If I scroll all the way down here, it says hat 1. So I have this hat button. I went map to mouse, add, and it pulled up like this. I clicked motion, because this is going to be moving you around. So motion, the speed is 2250, and the time to maximum speed is 0.70. This is how you're going to look around, like left, right, and up and down. So if you are looking around, that is how you're doing it while you're flying. So if you're flying forward and you want to look out of your left window, you would hold left here, and your head is going to swivel to the left. And then your head can swivel back to the right if you hold right. Play around with it. If you want it to be faster or slower, feel free. I believe that this is measured in pixels per second. So it's kind of a weird one. Anyways, that is the hat button. Now with that mapped, you are set up with the basic heli profile. That is everything you need to know to get the basic heli profile going. So with that being said, all you need to do, turn on here, make sure you're on here, and then you're going to be able to see all of your stick inputs within X360CE. Know that your these especially X360CE, this takes kind of a lot of computing power for some reason to have this open. So while you're playing the game, you're going to toggle this on. You're going to have this open, but you're going to minimize both these programs. Once both of these are minimized, then you're good to open up Arma and good to go. And everything should just work like new. And I would suggest downloading the Little Bird mod, which is AH6M, and going into a game master and just set up yourself with the Little Bird, because the Little Bird is the most responsive helicopter. So you're going to be able to tell of, hey, is this my stick that feels a little bit squishy, or is it the helicopter that feels squishy? Because the Mi-8, it feels squishy. But that's because it's just a big heavy bird and it takes a lot to get it to move where you want it to move. It's not really a stick input thing, it is a big heavy helicopter thing. So get used to how your helicopter flies around with the Little Bird, and then you'll know when you switch to a bigger, heavier helicopter that, oh, this is just input delay from the helicopter, not from my sticks or anything like that. All right. That being said, everything should now work. The only things you're going to run into issues with are when you open up this menu, if you have any stick input, all of a sudden, you can no longer control with your mouse. So this is why those dead zones were important. You need to be able to put your sticks back to 0 input. That means your feet, that means your rudder, that means your right stick. So every time you open up the menu or open up the map, you're going to need to do that. Because if you are trying to focus on something, but your throttle's down, it's going to do this when you open up the map. And you could go to where you want to with these things within the map if you don't want to take your hand off of the controls. But if you want to use your mouse and keyboard, you're going to need to set everything back to a 0 input state, and then you get mouse and keyboard control back. That being said, you guys should be ready to rock and roll. Everything should just work. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to throw them down below. I have a couple more videos coming out in the future. Here within about a week or so, I'm going to do one on how to set up a secondary Joystick Gremlin profile so that you can use a turret easier. So for example, right now I'm trying to pull up and I'm pulling back on the stick. If you were to get into a helicopter's turret and try and use your stick as the gunner, when you pull up, it's going to point the stick down. So that needs to be inverted. Well, we can achieve that through Joystick Gremlin. So I'm going to put out another video on how to set up secondary profiles. You could set one up for driving vehicles. You could set one up for being a turret gunner within a helicopter. And I also have one set up that just turns everything as far as the HOTAS off. So you can press a button and just have everything turn off and you're good to go. Might do one on how to fly, but there's a million videos out there on how to fly, and they're all as good, if not better, than what I could show. So I might show some stuff as far as the nuances of this setup, but I think that you guys can figure out the flying on your own. I might show a couple just tips and trick videos, but I'm just going to try and keep things focused on helping get you guys set up on what you're doing. So anyways, hope that helps for you, and that you guys can get your sticks up and running and good to go. Let me know if this video helped you out, and let me know if it didn't, if you ran into issues still and I need to make an update. Let me know. Keep an eye out in the screen or in the description below if anything wasn't covered here, as well as updates. So if I get comments that are particularly important, check the description of the video. I will have information about that. Real fast before I end this, a little bit about my setup. I'm running an A10 Thrustmaster A10 Warthog Edition. I also have a Red Dragon half keyboard and a Red Dragon gaming mouse. Here's the mouse. The mouse sits right here where I can use it just barely off screen. I have a little mouse pad set up on this side. I am sitting in a military surplus helicopter seat that I modified myself to be a gaming rig. Basically, I made the mounts for it and set it up, and now it's all foldable. It goes up and folds up, stores away. I would highly suggest going to GovPlanet. That is a great website where you can find military surplus stuff for dirt cheap. So keep an eye out there if you're into the whole DIY thing and want to make something yourself. That's where I found mine. And then just welded up the aluminum brackets and everything around it to suit my needs. Anyways, you guys take it easy. Have a good one. I hope this helped.